Good morning, guys. So the last video was done on a Friday and it is now Tuesday. So I have gone ahead and kept this bagged up and given it a good chance to join. So now what we want to do is cut the lid for our slab box. And what we want to do is cut it with just a gentle flowing curve. What that'll do will help hold the lid on rather than a straight cut. And rather than trying to cut little notches that it has to line up into. This way, it's easier to clean for the glaze, and it serves the same purpose of keeping your lid on from sliding off too easily. When we cut it, we want to try to cut in the upper third, not so high that we come up where the two pieces are joined, but just drop down about a third from the top and put this gentle flowing curve in it. Don't put shark teeth in it, because shark teeth create points and you risk your project then not fitting well or coming apart after it's been fired. It tends to stick. By shark teeth, I mean sharp angular zigzags. And also don't do big looping curves that come way down and so forth, because then you're taking up the area of your box. And also, if your curve is too loopy, it may be such that when you go to lift your lid off, it doesn't come off. So just a nice gentle curve, and then make sure you're aware of it when you come around to the last section so that you can line up to cut where the two pieces are going to meet. So as I said, this has been bagged up. It's leather hard, perhaps a hair drier than that. We're going to use the X-Acto knife. If you have an X-Acto knife, you can use that at home. If not, use whatever knife you do have. Make sure it's a nice sharp tip. And what you're going to do is start with your project. Like I say, you can pick any point, drop down about a third into the box, and slide the knife in. Now when you cut, you're going to cut by dragging it. Don't saw with it. If you saw with it, you get really sharp, jagged cuts, and it doesn't look neat, it doesn't look clean that way. So again, once the knife is in there, I'm going to leave it in, and I'm just going to start dragging it. And as I drag it, I'm just going to kind of move it up and down and make little gentle flowing curves. When you come to an edge, just be careful. You can turn the box as you do it, come around that edge, and again, just continue with your slightly gentle flowing curves. And just continue around. Again, just remember when you get to that last edge, or that last area, coming back around to where you meet, make sure that you kind of take a look so you know just where you're going to need to cut to match up. It should cut through fairly easily. When I've heard a potter named Robin Hopper referred to leather hard, he said it was like cutting into a firm piece of cheddar cheese. So if you think about going to Costco or the store and you get that big block of Tillamook cheddar cheese, it's going to be kind of firm like that when it's leather hard, but it's going to, if you have a nice knife, it's going to be easy to go ahead and slice into. Okay, come back to where you started, right? Then go ahead and slide the knife out, and at this point your lid should lift off. Sometimes you have to give it a little extra lift in the corners where it might want to stick. So we can see here a little bit of scraggly bits where we got the last bit of cross hatching and slipping done on the last piece. So I'll go through and I'll pick those out of there and I'll sponge that. Now as it turns out, I must have flipped mine over when I cut the top here, and you might have the same thing happen. That's perfectly fine. So if I lift this up and show to the camera now, you can see down inside, and the last piece I put on is actually on the bottom. So I need to go in there and put a coil in all 4 of the seams. In other words, all the way around, and blend in. You can see some of the crosshatch marks, and you can also see the slip down inside. So I'm going to clean that up before I do anything else. So again, just real quickly, what we do is we take a little bit of soft clay and we roll us out a little worm of clay, probably not even as thick as a pencil, and that's going to go in the seam all the way around. It doesn't have to be one full piece of clay. It can be in little pieces or little sections, because remember, once we put it in there, we're going to blend and smear it in and sponge it so it doesn't look obvious that it's there. So I'm going to go ahead and drop this inside. The camera's not going to show it very well. Once I get it in here, I will go ahead and hold it up and show you guys. So again, I'm just laying this coil down and I'm tacking it into the where the two pieces meet, into the corner seams, so to speak. I'm just laying it down in there initially and tacking it in so that it doesn't move. And I need just a little bit more. All right, so hold this up. You can see I've put that inside and it's just tacked in there at this point. So now I'm going to take my finger and I'm going to smear along inside and blend that together. So just whichever finger works best for you, or fingers, right hand, left hand, doesn't matter. Just make sure it's smearing it along in there nice and evenly. You can turn as you go, you can switch hands. Whatever works best for you. Just be careful as you go inside not to bump the edges. We don't want to change where our cuts are. The clay's still soft enough you can bump them and mar them. In other words, put dents in them, mess them up, smear them. We don't want that to happen, because then we're going to have a lid that doesn't fit nicely. At this point, we have to be really careful with both the rims on the top piece and the bottom piece. Anytime we go inside, anytime we do anything to clean it up or to decorate it, so that our lids stay exactly as we cut them, so that it will fit together nicely. Almost there. And again, we're trying to put this in here not only to reinforce the join, but just to give it a neater, cleaner look, more rounded edges in the bottom. But we don't want it to look big, bulky, obvious that something's been stuck there. As someone who knows ceramics might look at it and know that in slab construction you want to go ahead and put a coil in the seam, they might be able to look and tell. But your average person that doesn't know any better, not so much doesn't know any better, doesn't have that knowledge, they basically aren't going to go and notice it. It should be very subtle. We don't want someone opening up your box, looking inside and going, what's that big bulky lump of clay doing down in there? It's a little tricky to get in here, but do the best you can. All right, so at this point, I have it all pushed in there, smeared pretty well. So now I'm going to go and take my sponge and I'm going to go ahead and sponge it to smooth it out even more. And just push your sponge into the corner as you're sponging and smoothing it. I just kind of hold it like this and I just push it into the corner and drag it up the outside corner side, right in the corners. That way it's blending and smoothing it in, not only along the bottom but up the side, because that coil Like I say, it's being smeared in both directions. And just go over it as many times as you need to just really, like I say, blend that in so it's not terribly noticeable. It's there, we know it's there, but we want it to be almost invisible, so to speak. Almost there. All right. So I hold this up now. You can hopefully see down inside. You can see that I've spent a lot of time, a little bit of time there sponging, smoothing, trying to really blend that in. I see one spot here now that I'm not happy with, so I'm just gonna go back and hit that one more time. Just when I say I'm not happy with it, I can see a lump on the edge of the coil where it just needed to be blended a little bit more. There we go. All right, so at this point, we've got the inside pretty much taken care of. Again, we can get the little scraggly bits off of this from when we cross-hatched that last piece on, where they drop down inside. And we can go and sponge and clean that up a little bit more, just making it as perfect as we can. If you see any nicks, bumps, lumps, anything at all, that's where you want to go ahead and take the time to really sponge and smooth that out so that it looks as perfect as you can get it. So at this point, we can go ahead, we can put our lid back on to double check nothing moves. Sometimes when you open it or as you work on it, these might want to flare in or out. So we want to make sure they're staying where they're at. So at this point, it looks pretty good. So what I'm going to do is work to just, I'll set this down here, lightly sponge these edges. I want these edges to be rounded. I just think that when you go to clean the glaze off, it just gives it a nicer look, and the glaze comes off so much easier when these are slightly rounded. Now you don't want to over sponge them, because if you over sponge them, what can happen is you're actually sponging away the clay, and you'll end up creating a gap where the two pieces fit. But you do want to sponge them a little bit just to soften them and to round them off. And I'll go and I'll do the entire box lid that way, and then I'll double check it and make sure everything looks good. And I'll do the same thing on the top rim as well. So that takes care of the box part. Now we want to keep the lid on when this dries so that both pieces dry and shrink at the same rate. But if you have just sponged the rim, don't put the lid on it yet, because it will cause it to stick. Give it a few minutes to dry, or take a paper towel, and what you can do is use the paper towel in between. So try to get all the wrinkles out, but you can set that on there and then set this on top. That way it's going to stay together, but it's not going to stick. So I'm going to let mine rest like that for a minute while I talk to you about making a handle. So I'm going to say a handle on this is optional, because you can always just pick it up with your hand. You don't really need a handle. But if you do want to make a handle, I think just a real simple loop handle, kind of like this, is easy to do. And I'll show you how I do mine. Now, if you want to make yours a knob, or if you want to make it a circle, whatever you might have in mind, is perfectly okay. On this box over here, I did it a little different with the coils. I split a couple coils into a Y, and I cross-hatched and slipped them on, and then I put kind of a crossbar. I thought it gave it maybe a little more of an oriental kind of look. So if you like the looks of that, that's another option. But simply, you're going to go ahead and take two coils, and you can lay them side by side. Make sure they're really nice. They don't have to be terribly long. If you've got a towel or a cushion to put them on, you can put them on that while you blend them. Take your finger and then just go ahead and smear and blend them together. Just about 1/8 to 1/4 of the coil. Doesn't have to be too much, but it does need to be blended. Otherwise, when it dries and it fires, these might crack and split apart. And then turn and come from the other direction so that you get it blended together quite well. If you didn't want to blend them, you could crosshatch and slip them together. But personally, I think blending them is much quicker. So I opt for that method. Okay, and if you put it on something soft, then when you flip it over, you haven't lost your coil design. So then at this point, take your sponge, squeeze out most of the water, and then sponge over this. And as you sponge over this, it'll smooth out the surface where you were blending, and it'll sponge away some of the rough bits of the clay and make it look nice and neat and clean. Then flip it over carefully. Do the same thing on the other side. We want it to look neat and clean from both sides. So you got yourself this nice blended double coil handle. That'll give it plenty of strength. So then what I do, and I've already made one here, same thing, just did it beforehand. I find a little cardboard tube, a piece of PVC pipe, it could be the handle of a paintbrush, the handle of a carving tool, anything that's kind of nice and rounded. And I just like the size of this cardboard roll. I think it had string wrapped around it. I go ahead and put the coil over the top of the cardboard tube, and I just carefully shape it to it. Remember, your clay is really soft. You don't want to push any big finger marks into it, but just carefully shape it. And then I'll take my knife. Where's my bigger knife? There it is. And I'll move this one. And then I just go ahead and I trim a little bit off here to get an idea of the size of it. And to also try and trim it so it's balanced in proportion on both sides. So I have the same amount of kind of overhang on each side. And then I just go back and I reshape it, making sure that I have it the way that I want. Now I can always trim a little bit more off the edges if I want, but I like to leave a little extra there to start with. After it's leather hard, then I will go ahead and I will set it up onto my box, and I will determine where I think is the best place to put it. Hopefully right in the middle. And I'll go and look at it from all sides, all angles, until I get it right in the spot that I want. Then I'll make a mark so I know where to crosshatch. Then I'll take it off. I'll crosshatch where it goes. I'll crosshatch the underside. I'll paint up both pieces with slip. And then I'll go ahead and I'll press it on nicely. And then again, like any time I do crosshatching and slipping, especially with handles, I bag it up. Give it at least a day before I try to let it start to dry out. And also I try to let it dry slowly so that there's not any cracks there. I don't want to see a line or a gap in between when I join it. So use plenty of slip so it fills that in. If it starts to dry or the next day you look at it and there's a line or a gap there, paint a little more slip in there and then sponge around it. Just so we know that we don't see any cracks or gaps, so we have a really good join. And then from there, I'm just going to work to decorate my box. Whatever the decoration might be, I can crosshatch and slip designs onto it. I could carve into the outside, personalize it, decorate it, make it your own. All right? So I will go ahead and finish this up, and I will come back and make a very short video just showing the finished piece. And that'll be it. Hope you guys enjoy making a nice slab box, and I'll see you guys in the next video on the next assignment. Have a great day. Alright guys, so I'm back here again. I finished working on my box, and this is just a short little quick add-on to the video, to part 3, to show you the finished box. So I went ahead and I finished sponging and smoothing the inside and rounding these edges after I added the coils down inside on that last piece. Pushed them into the seam, sponged and smoothed them out so they're not obvious. And then I went ahead and took that handle that I demonstrated on how to make, forming it over the cardboard tube, kind of like the spare ones I have right here, and I went ahead and attached it. So at this point, I just tried to go ahead and sponge and smooth and clean up everything on it as best I could. This one I'm going to leave plain just like this. I'm not going to decorate it. I'm going to be making another one in class alongside you guys. And that one I think I'm going to add some decoration to. So this is it, my finished slab box. Just wanted to show you that. I'm going to cover it with plastic so that it doesn't dry out very quickly. That way hopefully I don't get little hairline cracks around where the handle is. So again, let's see if I can just set this here and hold it up a little bit closer. So I just took the time to really sponge and smooth out the inside, trying to make it as perfect as I can, trying to hide those coils that were in the seams that we've added, and then did the same thing with the top piece. So hopefully you guys are working well on yours, and I'll work on another one alongside you guys. So that is my finished slab box. Lid fits on there nicely, and so we'll just set it aside, cover it up, let it hang out, dry slowly, and then go on to the next project. Have a great day.